Towne is a Lehigh Valley native and a graduate from Lehigh University who spent the past 4 years working in the semiconductor industry as a chemical engineer in Shanghai, China. It was in China that Jake discovered the true value of the liberties we as Americans often take for granted, and it was this, in part, that ignited his passion for freedom. Jake publishes columns regularly at investment websites seekingalpha.com, goldseek.com, and links to his articles can be often found at dollarcollapse.com. This summer, he also attended Mises University and studied free market Austrian school economics. Jake believes that by protecting individual liberties, defending economic freedoms, and promoting peace, prosperity would be the inevitable result. He is also a staunch supporter of sound currency. Jake is dedicated to restoration of the Republic and a return to the rule of law as stated in the United States Constitution. He is running in 2010 as an independent private citizen for United States Congress in our district. We are now pleased to welcome Jake Towne, candidate for U.S. Congressional District 15. His appearance tonight at Moravian does not imply endorsement by Moravian College and or Moravian Theological Seminary.
Well, first of all, thank you all for inviting me to come here and talk. If you have any questions, the crowd is actually small enough. Feel free to raise a question at any time. We'll have a Q&A session afterwards as well. First, I want to reassure everyone that this talk, it won't be a political campaign speech. It's actually based on an economics article that I wrote in January of 2009, actually before the stimulus plan was even passed. I'm actually from Nazareth, which, by the way, is the original settlement that the Moravians founded at the time. They actually had a colony down in South Carolina which failed, and they were invited up here to work on some homes. So they came up here and settled and eventually also founded Bethlehem. But at the time I wrote this article, I was actually living over in Shanghai, China. I was over there in the semiconductor industry, like Christian said, building some factories. However, these days when one looks at the economy, you must clearly also factor in the government. So much so, it's kind of a wonder that the field actually hasn't been renamed Governomics. For questions today, go ahead, like I said, ask at any time. The PowerPoint that I have and also the speech will be available online, so no need to take notes or anything. One quick note before beginning is for the purposes of the talk, I'll be speaking at times as if the dollar were a stable currency. Although I recently checked my Lehigh University transcript and saw that somehow I got an A in freshman econ, up until 2 years ago, I actually believed that the dollars were somehow linked to gold. And this is not true. The truth is that the excessive money printing of the Federal Reserve has caused the dollar to lose over 96% of its purchasing power since 1933, when FDR confiscated the people's gold, which at the time was used as currency. Up until 1964, all the dimes, quarters, and halves that we used were 90% silver by mass, like the silver coin that I have here. Today, if you had a dime from 1964, it would actually be exchanged for about $1.25 at either a coin shop or a jeweler's. With the gold price, I'm not sure who here follows the gold market, but the gold price currently is at all-time highs of, in terms of dollars, at about $1,050 an ounce. What I have here is actually, it's an ounce of gold. If you want to actually hold it afterwards, you can. It's 3 times denser than steel, and actually a lot of times when you hold it, you figure out, well, it's kind of hard to counterfeit one of these. But what I want to point out is that it's not really that gold is reaching an all-time high. It's really that it's simply that the devaluation of the dollar is making itself known in the marketplace. Now, I want to say that gold and silver are not perfectly stable currencies. They are much superior to the dollar, but the very notion of stable purchasing power is an impossible dream. My point is that as I talk about X billions of dollars, you must remember that the dollar is based on a foundation made of quicksand, and as more dollars printed by the Fed flood the system, the purchasing power will drop. So the more dollars you add, the less purchasing power you have. And then again, I'll be sticking around after the talk and Q&A session, so any question will be fine. I will make 3 points as to why the stimulus plan will fail, and then we'll outline a much simpler plan that would not end in failure and might actually improve the economic situation. The first reason why central economic planners will fail is that they are too focused on full employment rather than full production. The second is that the American economy, or any economy for that matter, is far too complex for any central planning group. The third reason is that the purpose of more stimulus spending is exactly what got us into this mess in the first place. And I'll even submit to you that the central planners have no idea even how to produce a pencil, something as simple as a pencil. In fact, none of us actually do. And let me explain. The rallying cry is really full employment and full production and not full employment. Last year, actually 2 years ago now, I traveled to the mountainous and rainforested region of China along the Burmese border called Xishuangbanna. And it was there that in a motley collection of huts, far away from the nearest dirt road, the villagers I met here, and I was actually teaching all their kids for a week or so, it's as close as to a tribe of hunters and gatherers that you can find. Like, they had dirt bikes and stuff, but and while they were literally dirt poor, they still, in a lot of ways, managed to live a lot happier than a lot of the city folk. But one fact that I noticed is that they have zero unemployment. That's right, zero. Everyone has a job in this village, except for the kids who I was teaching, of course, and is fully engaged mainly in maintaining a food supply. In fact, even in modern economies, I argue that full employment is exceptionally easy. All you have to do is use inferior capital equipment, build in plenty of inefficiency bureaucracy or other forms of busy work. And again, I'll revert to China, where I lived for a few years. Half of the population there still plots their own family plot of land. But if they were capable and they had the equipment, they could try American-style, highly mechanized farming over larger plots of land. They'd have much higher yields, and basically a lot higher yields from a lot less effort. That there would also, temporarily be higher unemployment. But in fact, in China, part of the reason why these people still lead these serf-like lives is because their central planners, they cannot quite figure out what to do with them all. And as Austrian economist Henry Hazlitt, who was also a columnist for the New York Times for many years in the 1940s, he points out in his chapter, The Fetish Employment, in his book, Economics in One Lesson, which I also have here, the economic goal of any nation, of any individual, is to get the greatest results with the least effort. The whole economic progress of mankind has consisted in getting more production with the same labor. It is for this reason that men began putting burdens on the backs of mules instead of on their own, and that they went on to invent the wheel and the wagon, the railroad and the motor truck. Translated into national terms, this first principle means that our real objective is to maximize production. And doing this, full employment, that is, the absence of involuntary idleness, becomes a necessary byproduct. But production is the end. Unemployment is merely the means. We cannot continuously have the fullest production without full employment, but we can very easily have full employment without full production. So the real question is, not how many jobs there's going to be, but what shall we produce, and what in consequence will be our standard of living. So on that note, let's go back to the stimulus plan. President Obama, in a January 10th speech, notably focuses on just what Hazlitt warns to avoid, which is creating jobs, not optimization of our economic production. In fact, the sole mention of production is reserved for alternative energies, green jobs and such, which are great, but the trouble in there lies that the central planners, not a free market, will decide which technologies we are to pursue or not to pursue. President Obama sums up this talk by saying, quote, "It's not too late to change course, but only if we take immediate and dramatic action. Our first job is to put people back to work and get our economy working again."